the unseen law that keeps dark chosen ones trapped in their shadow. Most people think the battle between light and dark is external. They imagine warriors of virtue facing off against sinister forces, or enlightened beings rising to vanquish evil from the world. But the truth is far more subtle, far more dangerous, because the real war is not fought out there. It's happening in here, right now, within us. And the ones who are most deeply entangled in this war aren't always the ones you'd expect. In fact, some of the most intelligent, powerful, and spiritually gifted individuals are the ones most trapped. They are the dark chosen ones, and they are prisoners of a law they cannot even see. You might be wondering, what is a dark chosen one? It's not just someone who does harm. It's someone born with immense potential for influence, transformation, even awakening, but who, for reasons rooted in trauma, ego, and fear, turns their gifts inward and downward. Instead of using their insight to illuminate, they manipulate. Instead of healing, they dominate. And the tragedy is not that they are lost. The tragedy is they are bound by an unseen law that keeps them repeating the same cycles, even as they believe they are ascending.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
This law is subtle. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It convinces the dark chosen one that they are in control, that they are powerful because they can bend others to their will, that their intuition is superior, their insight sharper, their presence more magnetic. And in many ways, it's true, they are powerful. But the law they don't see is this: whatever power you gain through the shadow must be fed by your soul. And the more you feed it, the more it takes. Until one day, you realize you've built a throne on a battlefield of your own wounds. And worse, you can't step off the throne without losing everything you built. That's the prison. I've seen this firsthand. I've watched people who once had the light in their eyes become consumed by the very energies they sought to master. They started with noble intentions, truth, freedom, clarity. But somewhere along the way, pain crept in, and instead of transmuting the pain, they weaponized it. They learned how to use silence as control, insight as manipulation, presence as dominance. And because they were so good at it, so convincing, they believed they were evolving. But they weren't. They were embedding deeper into their shadow, mistaking power for purpose. Let me ask you something deeply uncomfortable. Have you ever used your spiritual insight to protect your ego? Have you ever used truth not to liberate, but to control? Have you ever cloaked your fear in wisdom, wrapping your trauma in language that sounds enlightened but feels hollow? If so, you've tasted the shadow, and if you've tasted it, you already know how seductive it is. The unseen law doesn't bind with chains, it binds with identity. It tells the dark chosen one, this is who you are. This is your role. You are special. You are separate. You are above. And because that identity feels powerful, they cling to it. But here's the twist. The more they cling, the more they lose their true self, until all that's left is a mask, a carefully constructed persona built to keep others in awe and themselves in denial. And yet, beneath that mask, there is still a soul crying out. That's what makes the dark chosen one so tragic. They are not evil. They are wounded, and their shadow is a fortress built to protect a child who never healed. Their cruelty is compensation. Their manipulation is camouflage. Their dominance is a desperate attempt to feel safe in a world that once betrayed them. So what does the law actually do? It ensures that as long as the shadow is in charge, all success will be poisoned. Every relationship will be transactional. Every win will leave a deeper emptiness. Every moment of triumph will be followed by an echo of loneliness. Because the law is simple yet absolute, what you build from the shadow cannot bring you into the light. And yet, so many stay trapped. Why? Because escaping the shadow requires death, not physical death, but ego death. the dismantling of the persona, the surrender of control, the complete and utter collapse of the identity they've spent years, sometimes decades, constructing. And that's terrifying, because when your power has been your mask, removing it feels like annihilation. But here's the paradox: only through that annihilation can true power emerge. The kind of power that heals instead of harms, that liberates instead of dominates, that connects instead of controls. And that power doesn't come from the mind. It comes from the soul. It rises from the ashes of the false self, and it cannot be faked. I've been there. I know what it's like to build an empire in the name of truth while secretly hiding behind pain. I know what it's like to impress the world and still feel hollow inside. I know what it's like to have people follow you, praise you, seek your wisdom, and still wake up wondering if any of it is real. That's the cost of the shadow. It gives you everything but robs you of yourself. So let me ask you the most dangerous question of all: what part of your power is actually your prison? Because until you answer that, until you face the part of you that wears the crown but fears the silence, you will keep playing a role in a story that was never yours. You will keep building from the shadow, mistaking strategy for wisdom, charisma for presence, and control for clarity. There is another way, but it starts with the most terrifying act a dark chosen one can make: telling the truth, not to others, to yourself. And when you do, when you peel back the layers and face the wound beneath the mask, you will begin to feel it. The law. The unseen force that has kept you cycling in patterns of pain disguised as power. And in that moment, you will have a choice: to continue or to break the pact. Because the law may be unseen, but it is not unbreakable. The pact of pain, why the shadow needs your loyalty to survive. There's a hidden agreement that every dark chosen one makes, whether they realize it or not. It's not signed in ink or blood, but in moments of silence, in choices made when no one is watching, in the decisions to protect the wound instead of heal it. This is the pact of pain, and it's the very fuel that keeps the shadow alive. You see, the shadow cannot survive without your loyalty. It thrives only when you continue to feed it with unprocessed emotion, with secrets you refuse to face, and with a version of yourself that's more invested in survival than in truth. The most dangerous kind of pain isn't the one that screams, it's the one that whispers, "This is who you are now." It convinces you that, because you were betrayed, you must never trust again. Because you were rejected, you must always be one step ahead. Because you were unseen, you must now demand attention. And so the pact forms. You agree to armor yourself with the shadow, and in return, it protects you from ever having to feel that original pain again. But there's a cost. The cost is your freedom, your authenticity, your peace. You become loyal not to your soul, but to the wound. And every time something threatens to heal that wound, love, vulnerability, honesty, the shadow becomes terrified, because healing breaks the pact, and breaking the pact means the shadow loses control. So it fights, it sabotages, it convinces you that anyone who gets too close must be pushed away. That softness is weakness, that surrender is death. But it's lying. The shadow lies not because it's evil, but because it's afraid. It was born from a moment where you felt powerless, and its only job has been to make sure you never feel that way again, even if it means keeping you trapped in a distorted version of power. This is the tragedy of the dark chosen one. Their greatest strength, their depth, their insight, their ability to see through illusion is turned against them. It becomes a weapon rather than a tool. And because they are so perceptive, they can justify anything. They can make their pain look noble, their defensiveness look like discernment, their arrogance look like confidence. The shadow becomes sophisticated, refined, almost beautiful. But make no mistake, it is still a prison. And the longer you stay loyal to it, the more it costs you. The pact of pain is subtle. It's the voice that says, They'll never understand you, so why bother trying? It's the belief that says, if I let go of control, I'll be destroyed. It's the habit of keeping people at arm's length while claiming you're just protecting your energy. But what if you're not protecting your energy? What if you're protecting your pain? Have you ever asked yourself, what am I afraid will happen if I let someone see the real me? Not the curated version, not the powerful persona, but the scared, longing, tender self beneath it all. What is so terrifying about being known without the mask? The shadow tells you that you'll be rejected, abandoned, exposed. But that's not the truth. That's the wound talking. And as long as you agree with it, as long as you nod your head and say, yes, that's safer, you uphold the pact. You keep the shadow in power. And each time you do, you drift a little further from your own soul. But here's something the shadow doesn't want you to know. It only has power because you believe it does. The moment you stop feeding it with fear, it begins to dissolve. The moment you choose truth over protection, the pact begins to break. And in that breaking, something incredible happens. You begin to feel yourself again, not the version of you shaped by pain, but the one that existed before the wound. The one who longed to love and be loved. The one who knew how to play, to trust, to dance with life instead of control it. Breaking the pact is not a one-time decision. It's a moment-to-moment practice. It happens every time you choose vulnerability over defense, presence over performance, connection over control. It happens when you stop trying to be impressive and start trying to be real. When you stop proving and start revealing. When you say, I see the shadow, I honor its purpose, but I no longer serve it. That is the turning point. Because the truth is, you don't need the shadow to be powerful. You don't need pain to give you permission to rise. You were born with everything you need to be free. But freedom requires truth. And truth requires the courage to walk away from the roles you've outgrown, even if they made you feel safe. So let me ask you, what would happen if you stopped being loyal to your pain? Who would you be if you no longer needed it to define you? That's not a rhetorical question. That's the doorway. And once you walk through it, the whole game changes. The mirror of power, how the world reflects the shadows you deny. There is a truth most people spend their entire lives avoiding. The world you see outside you is a mirror of what you carry within. Not metaphorically, not philosophically, literally. The people you meet, the situations you attract, the chaos you face, the love you crave, it's all a reflection. And for the dark chosen one, this mirror becomes especially powerful because the more energy you carry, the more vividly the world reflects your inner state. Power amplifies the mirror, and that's where the trap deepens. You see, when you deny your shadow, when you suppress your pain and wear power as a mask, the universe doesn't punish you, it simply reflects you. It shows you situations that match your frequency. If you're hiding fear behind dominance, you'll attract people who challenge your control. If you're masking unworthiness with arrogance, you'll keep meeting people who won't validate you. And if you bury your grief beneath a persona of spiritual superiority, you'll keep finding yourself surrounded by people who either reject you or worship you, both of which keep you isolated. This is the hidden suffering of the dark chosen one. On the surface, they may seem untouchable, magnetic, even divine. But underneath, they're often trapped in a cycle of reflection they don't understand. They think the world is against them, that people are too shallow to understand them, too weak to match them, too blind to see their brilliance. But the truth is harsher. The world is simply mirroring back the parts of themselves they refuse to face. I've been there. I've had seasons where everything around me seemed to be falling apart, connections breaking, trust dissolving, chaos erupting. And I thought, why is this happening to me? I'm doing the work. I'm showing up. But when I looked deeper, I saw it. These weren't punishments. They were messages. Every betrayal was reflecting my own self-betrayal. Every person who abandoned me mirrored the parts of myself I'd abandoned. Every moment of rejection pointed to the places I had rejected my own truth. The world is not random. It's responsive. And when you carry unresolved shadow, especially as a powerful being, the world becomes an exact match to your inner unrest. That's the law. It doesn't care how much you meditate, how many followers you have, or how enlightened your words sound. The universe doesn't listen to language, it listens to energy. And it reflects that energy back through people, patterns, and events. That's why some dark chosen ones live in constant conflict. They keep attracting drama, resistance, and betrayal, not because they're cursed, but because they're refusing to look in the mirror. And the more they resist, the louder the mirror gets. Until eventually they reach a breaking point, a moment where the pain of denial becomes greater than the fear of truth. Have you reached that point yet? Have you started to notice that the same story keeps playing out in different costumes? That no matter how much you change your environment, the same emotions return? That your external world keeps pushing you to confront something you buried so deeply inside, you almost forgot it was there? That's not coincidence. It's design, because the shadow you deny doesn't disappear, it projects. It becomes your relationships, your obstacles, your lessons. And until you face it, you will keep trying to fix the mirror instead of changing the reflection. You'll keep rearranging your life, hoping the chaos will stop, without realizing the chaos is just a signal that part of you is still in hiding. But here's the breakthrough. The moment you stop resisting the mirror, the moment you say, "Let me see what I've refused to see," the reflection begins to shift. Not instantly, not dramatically, but authentically. You begin to attract people who reflect your wholeness instead of your fragmentation. You find yourself in spaces that support your truth rather than challenge your mask. You stop performing and start connecting, not because the world changed, but because you did. This is the great irony. The dark chosen one holds immense power, but until they face their own reflection, they remain powerless to change their life. They keep casting spells of influence, hoping to bend the world, when the real spell is cast by their own unhealed wounds. And the only way to break it is to look in the mirror and say the words the shadow fears most. I see you. I forgive you. And I release you. The mirror doesn't lie. It doesn't judge. It just reflects. And once you understand that, you stop fearing it. You stop blaming others. You stop running. You begin to stand still. And in that stillness, you begin to see the truth of who you are, not the mask, not the shadow, but the soul. So ask yourself, what is life reflecting to me right now? What patterns keep returning? What emotions keep knocking at the door? And more importantly, what part of me have I refused to see? Because until you face that part, the mirror will keep showing you the same story. And only when you change the author does the story finally evolve. The Liberation Code: how to transcend the shadow without destroying yourself. There comes a moment in every dark chosen one's journey when the weight of the mask becomes heavier than the fear of taking it off. That's the moment everything begins to shift. But the path to liberation is not about killing the shadow, banishing it, or pretending it never existed. True transcendence doesn't come from violence against the self, it comes from integration. From understanding that the shadow was never your enemy. It was your armor. And now you've simply outgrown it. This is the key most people miss. The goal isn't to escape the shadow. If you try to destroy it, you're still at war within yourself. You're still feeding the cycle. The real liberation code is this: you must love what you once feared and forgive what you once judged. You must bring light not to fight the darkness, but to see it, to hold it, to offer it the one thing it's never had: acceptance. The shadow is made of exiled parts of you. The child that wasn't protected. The teenager who was shamed. The adult who learned that vulnerability was dangerous. These are not monsters. These are memories. And they've been surviving the only way they know how, by hiding, by defending, by lashing out. When you see that, your relationship to the shadow changes. You no longer see it as something ugly or evil. You see it as something sacred that forgot its origin. To transcend the shadow, you must invite it back into the heart. You must sit with the discomfort, not to fix it, but to witness it. To say, I'm here now. I see what you've been carrying, and you don't have to carry it alone anymore. That's how the healing begins. That's how the unseen law breaks, not through force, but through presence. And yes, it will feel like death at first, because the identity you built, the one that kept you safe, admired, in control, will begin to dissolve. But here's the truth: what dies is not you. What dies is the version of you that was never real. The persona. The mask. The performance. And what's left is something raw, something honest, something powerful beyond imagination. That's when your real power returns. The kind of power that doesn't need control to feel safe. That doesn't manipulate to feel loved. That doesn't dominate to feel seen. This power is quiet, grounded, clear. It doesn't shout. It doesn't prove. It simply exists. And in its presence, others remember their own truth. You become a liberator, not just for yourself, but for others. Because when someone sees you living without the mask, they realize they can too. You become a signal in the collective field, a reminder that it's possible to walk through the valley of shadow and come out not bitter, but whole. So the final question is this: are you ready to stop surviving and start living? Because the shadow only survives when you're in survival mode, when you're constantly scanning for threats, proving your worth, chasing validation. But the moment you exhale, the moment you root yourself in truth instead of performance, the game changes. The law breaks. The cycle ends. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to remember who you were before the world told you to hide, before pain taught you to armor up, before power became your only language. That version of you, the true you, is still here, waiting, and the door is open. Walk through.